Well, good morning, everybody. It is time. We are so glad you guys have joined us. It is Saturday, November 9th. Yeah, excuse me, November 9th, December 9th. I'm a whole month
Which,
behind here. Um, we appreciate everybody getting on. We love doing these on Saturday mornings where we get to feature and highlight an investor or a team of investors from our community and just kind of share what our community and what our investors are doing across the country and every Saturday, it could be a different strategy. It could be short-term rentals. It could be long-term. It could be a flip. It could be a multifamily. It could be commercial, land development. We've had an assortment of different property tours. We've had motels on before, and it's just really neat to see what's going on and share with those folks that are on today. If you're a guest, you guys have got a great property tour in store for you today. We appreciate you getting on. And again, my name is Scott Buckholtz. I am your host. I have Yas Hakan, our co-host. And today we have Tom Robinson and Ash Affable on. I think, Tom, you're ready to kick off, aren't you, Tom?
absolutely.
There you are. Well, brother, it's good to see you. I think I've seen you a couple times now in the last month or two. That's more than we saw until during COVID and all that. So it's good to see you.
You too. You too. It's
Yeah.
great to be here.
Yeah, so you're in the Colorado market,
Yes.
and but you're not originally from Colorado, is that correct?
No, I grew up in St. Louis, and I've lived around the country. I've lived in St. Louis and Chicago and Boston, and spent a little time in Arkansas and Georgia and Florida and Pennsylvania. But I grew up a Midwest boy. But I've been here in Denver for almost about 6.5 years now.
Has it been that long?
I know. Can you believe it?
Oh my gosh. When we first met, you were in St. Louis, and I grew up in St. Louis. So I lived out in West County and in the Manchester area, if you're
Oh,
familiar with that.
sure.
Went to the Parkway School District and went to Merrimack Community College right there in St. Louis. And so yeah, when we first connected, you were in St. Louis. I remember that first time I came through St. Louis and we just sat down and just kind of jammed and talked at I think it was a St. Louis bread company or something. And do you remember that?
Yeah.
Gosh, that seems like forever
Feels like a
ago.
lifetime ago. Yeah.
So, Tom, it's so neat to have you out. I know Ash will be joining us shortly. She's multitasking as as today we have a huge online event where we're featuring one of our mentors or facilitators from our community that does our one of our classes, or I don't know if she's doing two of her classes now, and you're live streaming a huge event. So she's kind of running that right now in the other part of the office, right?
Yeah, well, you said community, and we definitely are. So, yeah, there are about 25 people in the other room learning how to raise capital for their real estate deals from Whitney, who's an absolute master of the game. So, yeah, so Ash will join us here in about 10 or 15
That's awesome.
minutes.
So let's kick it off. Talk a little bit about yourself. I know that, that's not your favorite thing to do, but it's kind of neat to share with people and that kind of where you came from, what you were doing, how you stumbled across or how you intentionally came across real estate investing. And then the big thing is, how you found our community, like I found it, you found it, and what was the thing about it that was like, this is the group I want to be with. This is the team of investors I want to build my business with. So take
Yeah,
it from there, if you would, Tom.
yeah, absolutely. Uh, I knew pretty early on that I wanted to figure out real estate investing. I grew up on a street in St. Louis over by the old Telanias, Forest Park. I was right at Skinker and Delmar, Delmar area. And my parents bought this. We bought this really beautiful house, brick house, 100-year-old house, and we lived there for 11 years. And they bought the house for about $115,000, and they sold the house 11 years later for about $115,000. So no appreciation. It was terrible. And then what happened is a couple years later, real estate investors came in and bought three of the houses on the block. So the house right next door to our house is beautiful. The house right next door was really rough. The house at the top of the street, gentlemen would drive up, they get out of their car, they go inside for about 30 minutes, and then drive off. And there was sort of a parade of people. And there was a house at the bottom of the street where people would drive up and someone would run out of the house, run back into the house. So there were entrepreneurs on my block, but mostly it was great, but there were just a couple problem properties, and investors came in. I found this out later, came in and bought and fixed and flipped the houses. So those 3 houses were purchased and renovated and sold for more money and then more money and then more money. And by the time those 3 houses were renovated, the value of every house in the block had gone up by about $100,000. So I saw on a block where I knew the neighbors, where I knew the people, like I saw the impact that can be made by fixing up a few houses. And I went, that's awesome. But I didn't have any family members or anybody that did real estate investing. So I was like, well, I'll get in the industry. And I became a real estate agent in 2006 and 2007. And I was like, if I go work for Remax, surely they'll teach me real estate investing. And found out that that's not at all the case. Any realtors on here will tell you it's a sales gig. And I figured, well, if I work with real estate investors, they'll teach me how to do real estate investing. Also not the case. So I'd go, hey, Scott, you're killing it. Teach me how to do what you do. And you'd say, no, shut up and do your job. And I'd go, well, Scott is a jerk. He's doing so well. Why won't he teach me? And what I didn't realize until much later was I was going to a business professional and saying, hey, Scott, I don't have any skills, any knowledge, any resources. I don't really have anything to offer, but I want you to stop building your business and teach me how to build mine. Not a good offer. If you're not my uncle, you're probably going to say no to that, right? So I was like, okay, well, I did like the weekend boot camp thing, and it was just a sales pitch for a sales pitch for a sales pitch. I went to RIA groups. I wanted to get into it, but I couldn't find any way to actually learn and get support and grow. And I actually got pretty jaded. And I was like, okay, well, maybe when I'm old and rich, then I'll figure out this real estate investing thing. And I've mastered getting older. Like I haven't missed a day. But the getting rich thing was a little elusive. So I started several companies. I started a marketing company, and I'd actually just had a pretty catastrophic business failure. I had about $150,000 in revenue that I anticipated for my business that just evaporated. And I had put a lot of money into building the program that was, supposed to earn this money. And then there was a government shift and it just vanished. And I was sleeping. This was 2015. I was sleeping on an air mattress in a drafty Chicago apartment. And a buddy of mine called me and said, bro, let's do real estate investing. And I hung up the phone. I was like, oh, listen, I'm not a genius, but I know that the guy sleeping on an air mattress in a drafty apartment that someone else owns is not the number one candidate for real estate investor, of the year. So I hung up and I was like, no, that's dumb. And I was jaded. Like I said, Scott, I'd been to a bunch of things. It was a sales pitch. And I'm like, so I didn't want to go through the excitement of maybe this will work for me, and then the disappointment of, oh, this is just another one of those things. But he was a good friend. He was persistent. He was like, just come to a thing. And I ended up going to an event in Chicago. And what I discovered was that this is actually a community of people that get together week after week after week after week to learn, to grow, to develop, to build relationships, to master the game of deal analysis, finding, evaluating, funding, doing deals. I ended up being part of a fix and flip study group with 86 other people. For 6 months, we got together every week, broke up into groups. We went out, we looked at properties. We actually saw deals being done. I had the opportunity to learn from other people in real life. And, the world has shifted. So we still do that in person, but now we also have all these resources online. That's why I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to be here and have this conversation, because what I discovered was a comprehensive education, but also with a community of people that, you and I think we sat down at that Breadco in St. Louis 7.5 years ago, something like that. right? And here we are, we're still at it. When I started that fix and flip study group, I had done 0 fix and flips. I bought a house once and lost it in foreclosure. That was my real estate investing experience before I met this group. I've done 37 renovations. Yeah, no, geez. 37 renovations. We have a dozen long-term rentals in the Midwest. We own arbitrage and manage a dozen short-term rentals.
Hi.
Thanks. This is Ash.
Hi,
you may have guessed. Yeah, we're working on a commercial deal. It's just such a different landscape, and it's 100% because of the knowledge that I've gained, the knowledge, the skills, the ability to marshal resources, and really the way that I see the world is so fundamentally different. I'm excited to share the property that we're going to share today because it's just a beautiful example of solving a real estate problem in a way that is just a massive win for absolutely everybody involved. And it's profitable, which is really cool.
Love that. Hey, Ash, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. We're doing wonderful. So, you know, we had you guys on, gosh, what was it, a couple months ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, super excited, Ash, for you guys to be back on today. And so there's a lot of people on today that are guests. They're trying to figure out this whole thing, real estate investing. They're trying to figure out what's this community about. Um, and why should I plug in? Why should I connect? And I don't know if Ash, you could talk a little bit to that. And then I know we want to definitely get into this deal and talk about how you were able to solve a buyer, or excuse me, a seller's issues. And it's a really cool story. So, so if you could, Ash, talk a little bit about that for folks who are on today.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing without the community, without the knowledge base that we have access to through the community. I watched my dad be a real estate investor when I was growing up, although he never would have called himself that. He would buy up generational homes in the town where I lived. If you don't know what a generational home is, it's like would look like a little McMansion to us now, but it would be, multiple floors and the different parts of your family living with you. So the grandparents, parents, and then the children. It's sometimes even have maze quarters, like it goes way back. And my dad would buy these houses. He converted one into an apartment for him, for himself, and then ultimately met my mom, and that's where I was born. And then he built my mom a house in the suburbs, and he held on to that as an income property. And as a little girl, I would go and knock on the door to collect rent and, spackle walls when tenants moved out and things. So he did not know the value of short-term rentals in the 80s like I do now, but my dad passed away when I was 12, and he had always taught me that he was teaching me this passive income and, have something like that for yourself. But then when he passed away, I lost access to that knowledge. And so I always told myself, I'll do real estate someday, but we all know when we say someday, that just keeps moving further out. And so when someone introduced me to this community and the tools and training and access to the knowledge here, I really lit up and grabbed a hold of it, because there's really nothing else like it out there. Believe me, I looked. I'm an intellect in the drive system, so I do my homework and I research, and this was the best that I could find. So really glad I said yes.
Well, that's awesome. Got a little bit of a frog this morning. I apologize.
Me too.
So
You're good.
thank you. So let's talk a little bit about, because you guys, you mentioned some numbers a little bit ago, Tom. You went from living on a, mattress on the floor of a drafty apartment in Chicago. Okay. I probably can't imagine you had an 800 credit score at that time.
No,
Probably not. And so there was particular reasons why you were in that situation. And now let's bring it several years in advance. We're not talking 20 years, we're talking several years later. Where are you guys at now in your portfolio? What do you got? What you've done? Flips, you've done long-term rentals, you've done short-term rentals. I just heard commercial.
Yeah, we have 12 long-term rentals in the Midwest. We have a dozen short-term rentals. We own a couple. We arbitrage several. The one that we're going to talk about today, we arbitrage, which means that we pay a monthly rent check, and then we market it as a short-term rental on Airbnb, VRBO, bookings.com. So we make the difference. That's the arbitrage. So if we have, today's example will show, $5,000 in expenses and $7,000 in revenue, then we keep the $2,000 on that property. That makes sense. So we have a dozen of those. We are in the process. We solve real estate problems. So there was a real estate problem next to my sister's house in this little town in Colorado. You wouldn't know if you wouldn't know you left Denver. So but it's its own town. You'd find out if you got pulled over, because it would be the Mountain View police, and they'll get you. But it's like 8 blocks. So we met the mayor, and we're trying to solve this problem property next to my sister's house. And she said, well, hold off on that because we have this other problem, and ended up buying a commercial piece of property end of February, which will either we're in the process of navigating, we'll either build a boutique hotel on it or sell it back to the city for twice what we bought it for 10 months ago.
Yeah.
So we're kind of working out the best exit on that one. But we love short-term rentals. So we've also started managing short-term rentals for other people, because it's something that we enjoy. It's something that we've gotten really, really good at. And it's something that we've discovered. There are a lot of people do it really poorly.
Or they don't want the headache.
Definitely.
Or setting up all the systems, because it's not as valuable to set up all the systems we have in place if you only have one property. So
Right.
many, and it becomes more and more worth it to have those automation systems and things in place.
Yeah.
Well, the short-term rental business, it wasn't called short-term rental. I mean, initially it was called the Airbnb business.
Yeah.
And it created such a buzz, and there has been a buzz about that strategy, about that industry for several years now. And I remember going to Hawaii. It was for a community event, and I did an Airbnb. And this is before VRBO was in business, but I did an Airbnb right on the ocean in a high rise. We paid like $89 a night to
Nice.
overlook the whole ocean.
Nice.
And oh my gosh. And I was like, how are these people making money on this deal? And come to find out, Hawaii, I mean, go figure, they're booked, like their capacity is like 98% of the time. I mean, they're constantly booked. But I remember thinking about that concept. And then a few years ago, I was talking to somebody, and they were talking about how they had got into it like 5 or 7 years ago with no knowledge, no community, nothing. And they got into it about 5 or 6 units deep, and they ended up losing it all.
Oh no.
Because they didn't do the systems. They didn't understand. I mean, it's a great business, and you guys are going to talk about the arbitrage model, but it's like anything else worthwhile. There's work involved. I mean, if you don't do the physical work, you got to pay someone to do the physical work, but there's the system set up you guys, where you're at today compared to where you were on your first unit, I'm sure is like a million miles away, right?
Well, and the first 2 short-term rentals that I got involved with before we ever had any training on short-term rentals. And it was, between the 2, all the work and everything that I was doing was like 10, 12 hours a week. And now with the systems we have in place, managing a dozen of them most weeks is 10, 12 minutes a week. So Yeah, and I was pulling my hair out. I was like, short-term rentals are terrible. And then one of the members of our community mastered it and did a 3-day masterclass for us. And I did that training, and with those two that I first started with, went from 10, 12 hours a week to 15 minutes a week by putting systems in place. And Scott, that's been consistently I started working with this group 8 years ago, and consistently my experience has been, get in and do something, and then someone in our community learns and shares, and I get to benefit from their work and their knowledge and put that in place to upgrade our business, our situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about this particular unit that you guys are going to share the story on, and then kind of show some pictures, kind of get to some numbers. But, the arbitrage model, when you talk about that, and I'm sure today, even though you guys do this, when you first talk to somebody about the arbitrage model who doesn't understand the arbitrage model, the old saying, you don't know what you don't know. But people hear this arbitrage and they hear about, oh, you rent a property, do a lease or some sort of thing, a contract, and then you rent it out on a short-term basis, maybe midterm, but short-term, midterm basis. And when you first tell people about this and you start talking about it, what, and you can share with me on this, typically the reaction is that won't work. And you're like, it won't work? And they're like, yeah, that won't work. And why won't it work? It's because they don't understand how to have a conversation, and the fact that there are a lot of people out there. And I can't even give numbers about it, but there are just literally hundreds of thousands of landlords that if they could find someone like you and Ash to take over their property,
Yeah,
they would love it, right?
yeah. Well, there are two aspects to that. One is, hey, Scott, I want to rent your house, and I want to move a big group of strangers through it every 3 or 4 days for the next few years. Is that cool with you? No, that sounds terrible. So if I come to you with that kind of offer, that's a really easy no. So that's one aspect. So with the property that we're going to share, I was having lunch with the homeowner, and he was brand new to our community. And we were having lunch, and he's like, hey, I've got this problem. I have this beautiful house in Parker. Parker, Colorado it's a Denver suburb. It's kind of like Manchester is to St. Louis. And if you're anywhere else in the country, think of like a nice suburb, nice, boring suburb near a city. Right. So we're having lunch, and he's like, I have a problem. My wife's going to have our second child, and we don't have any family in Parker. So we're moving to Florida. But I love my house. I love Colorado. I'm definitely going to move back. And the rate at which property values are skyrocketing, I don't want to sell my house and then try to buy another one in 5 years. So I'd like to keep my house. But I also don't want to put a tenant in it, because people are animals sometimes. it's like I'm afraid that I'm gonna put somebody in my house, and I'm gonna come back and it's just gonna be a disaster, and it's my house and I'll be heartbroken. And he's like, so I don't want to sell it, but I don't want to rent it. And I went, well, have you considered short-term rentals? And he was like, yeah, I thought about that, but why would anybody get a short-term rental in Parker? I mean, sure, a condo overlooking the ocean in Hawaii makes sense, but Parker, it's not a ski town. There's no beach. They've got a horse show in the summer. Why would anyone come here?
But there's lots and lots of families and golf courses and weddings and holidays to come visit family. They are some of our most rented properties, and some of our most profitable properties is just because it's this really nice suburb where people want to gather in larger groups.
Yeah.
And so that's actually one of the points about this property is it's one of the largest Airbnb, short-term rentals that you can get in the area that sleeps 10 people. So most of the competition, they only sleep 4 or maybe 5. So that's an advantage that we have with this property.
Yeah. So his initial thought was, can't do short-term rentals because no one is going to come to Parker for that. And I'm nervous about having a group of people, a new group of people come through my house every week. Like, isn't that rough on the house? And I said, well, you know, our business model requires that the property is perfect when people show up.
Hotel level perfect every time.
So in 5 days from now, it has to be perfect. And in 5 months, it has to be perfect. In 5 years from now, your place has to be perfect.
Or better than when we got it.
Yeah. Right. And we have to make it better than it is right now. And then we have to keep it better than you've kept it for our business to work.
Exactly.
We also, we're not gonna, God forbid, one of us could get sick with like, there, we could have a thing, but our business isn't going to get sick. Our business isn't going to lose its job. You know, is in terms of the caliber of tenant. You don't have to find a new tenant in 12 months. You don't have to, like, we just kind of handle all of the things. We have a cleaning crew come through pretty much every week, sometimes twice in a week.
Yep.
Maintenance is handled, all of that. And by the end of that conversation, it was, will you guys please, will you please rent my house?
That's awesome. So now, how long ago was that? How far back did you start this journey on this particular house in Parker?
We started that conversation
last June. Yep. Or last
we
spring.
started it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Because they were getting ready to leave. They actually went and traveled for 4 months. So we had a little trial period. And I almost made them sign an agreement that when they came back to their house after being gone for 4 months and they saw how great it was, that they would still leave and move to Florida. And they got back from 4 months in Italy and went, we don't want to move to Florida. It's like, you promised.
Yeah. So you were able to have that conversation. And again, for folks who are on today, how you learned how to have that conversation, how you learned how to form the whole process of having that conversation, because it wasn't a sales job. I know you, Tom. I mean, you didn't have to sell this individual on this. You just had to basically have a conversation, lay out the facts, tell them what you could do for them. And you've already kind of spelled that out with keeping the house up. The fact that not only will it look perfect 5 days from now, it's going to look perfect 5 months from now. And so the individual decided, hey, let's do this. So you went into the agreement. And first of all, what I would imagine, was the house like move-in ready? And did you get the furniture and everything?
Can I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, that's right. You got pictures. Pictures are much better.
All right. We should probably start with this, Scott.
Yep.
We're not offering financial advice. I'm not a lawyer. Don't take something that we say and yeah, I don't make good choices. Okay. So this is one thing I want to point out. So this is Rentometer. This is a nice house. So he could have gotten, I mean, pretty easily could have gotten $3,200 in rent. And this is, I just want to share, this is another little aspect, another little tool with talking to property owners and negotiating the rent. So he could get $3,200 for this house pretty reliably. But then he would have an 8 to 10% management company fee because he lives in a different state. So he's not going to manage this himself. So they'd keep $300. And then anytime there was a maintenance call, he'd pay, if the toilet was not flushing properly, he'd pay for the repair and he'd pay for the management oversight of that. So there are a lot of expenses. So he'd be making probably $2,700 if he was renting it for 32. So that's something that we take into consideration if we're going to arbitrage a place, is we look at what would the homeowner actually be making with a potentially riskier situation. So when it comes to actually negotiating what the rent agreement is going to be, we take that into account and kind of strip out those fees, because we're going to be handling management, we're going to be handling the repairs, we're going to be handling repairs of anything that's, you know, the door handle's loose, toilet's not working properly, that kind of thing. But so when I went to walk through the house and take a look and see, like, what are we working with, it was not exactly ready for us to go. You know, they had some things and stuff, and a little work, but the house was in good shape. Some of the properties that we work with need a variety of things. This, if you see kind of in the back, this is a basement room, and there's a little storage area in the back. So the only work that we needed to do on the house was putting a door in this spot. And we have a contractor friend, so they paid to have a drywall and a door over the lock. So this is now the cleaner's closet. This is a storage space for cleaning paper towels, toilet paper, that stuff. So that was the house. And now this is the listing. One thing that I want to share, Scott, about the listing is this is a new thing that we learned. We did a series of Facebook ads. So we spent a couple $100 posting different pictures on Facebook to find out what picture got the most response, which was surprising, because this picture of the front of the house is the picture that got the highest response rate of people clicking of all of these pictures. So that's what we chose as the front picture for Airbnb. Before that, we had, I think, a picture of the kitchen. We had a compelling photo. It's a beautiful place. So when we took over the house, one of the things that we were able to do is give the family the option to leave furniture that they didn't want to move to Florida. And rather than leaving it on the side of the road for somebody to come pick up, we were actually able to compensate them for some of the furniture. So some of the bed frames and bureaus and sofa. Yeah, this sofa and the pull-out was there as well. Yeah. And then Ash went to work making it gorgeous. It's a beautiful house. By the way, anyone on the line, if you're coming to Parker, hit us up for a discount code. Hopefully these pictures are good enough that somebody will want to come stay in Parker. So this is that room in the basement. We turned this into a kid's room. The door back here is the cleaner's closet. So this house very comfortably sleeps 10 and can sleep 12. That's it. Yeah. We'll get to the neighborhood. All right, so just looking at the last year, can we hop into numbers? Do we have any questions? I haven't been looking at the chat. Any questions before we jump into numbers, Scott? Okay, good. So far through Airbnb, we've been paid $66,875. We have another booking scheduled in the week that'll be another $1,700. Through VRBO, we've been paid $14,000 so far. Now, what's that? Yeah, so no. Great. So for the numbers, for our purchase price on this house was $0, obviously. Our initial startup cost, we had an initial startup cost. So there was the point when the family was going to Italy for for 4 months. And there was a variety of things that the house needed. So it needed some technology, it needed smart locks, it needed a security system, it needed some things that we'll talk about in a minute. It needed towels, it needed sheets, it needed better curtains. There was a variety of things that it needed to be ready for that 4 months. And that was $12,000. I didn't actually pull most of that money out of my own pocket. We, in this case, had the homeowner cover that cost, and we wrapped that into a $300 a month increase to the rent. So we negotiated them paying that cost in exchange for a higher rent than we otherwise would have paid.
Mhm.
Once they moved out, they took a bunch of their furniture with them. So Ash got it from not ready, very, very not ready, to the pictures that you saw in the Airbnb listing for $14,000. And this money also, we raised private funds for this, which we created a 3-year amortized note at 12%. So borrowed the funds for that. In this case, it was from one of my other companies, but we've typically do this when we're setting up a short-term rental. There are lots of people that don't get 12% returns in their retirement account. Whitney is in the other room. Well, she's in Chicago, but she's being live broadcast teaching how to raise private funds for deals. So we won't get in the weeds on that one, but that's the $465 a month is the cost for getting it ready to rent. After looking at taking out management fees and what have you, we agreed with the homeowner that $2,900 would be fair rent, but with a $300 from the initial startup cost, that's $32. So every month for 18 months, we've sent them $3,200, and we'll keep doing that as long as they'll let us. Minimum of 4 years on that. Utilities, maintenance, tech, cleaning, those work out to be on average $1,630 a month. And then this is the $465 repayment for the setup cost. So our average monthly cost is $5,295. And Scott, I want to take a second and say this was not our first short-term rental. So we had a number of short-term rentals set up and making money before we took this on. So I don't want anybody on the line who hasn't done this yet to think that what we're suggesting is that they start out by taking on a $5,000 a month liability. Is that clear?
Yes, very clear. Very smart.
Okay, good. Because yeah, so what we signed a 4-year agreement to spend $64,000 a year, which don't have that be the first, don't have that be your first deal. But I do recommend having that be your 4th or 5th. Once you get your feet under you, you have the systems in place, you know what you're doing. So just to kind of break those expenses down a bit, cleaning this year, including the guests that are there now and the guests that are staying at the end of the year, we'll have done 34 cleans, which means 34 times this year we've had a cleaning crew come through and get the house back to perfect. If a door handle's loose, we find out about it and get it fixed, right? So that averages out to about $570 a month. That also means that we've helped other people make $6,800 doing their chosen business, which is pretty rad. So lawn care is a couple $100 a month. The house utilities, heating, electric, water, that stuff is $605. Supplies on average run us $100, and that's toilet paper and paper towels and shampoo and the coffee pods, the things that people use while they're there. And then technology, Hospitable is the system that we've been using. And for your first 10, it's just the best. It's simple, it's user friendly. It's like $20 a month per listing. So for this listing, we spent $20. Minute is a sound, humidity, and smoke monitor. So one concern is, well, what if people throw parties and bug the neighbors? And Minute is a technology. It actually shouldn't have an E. That was autocorrect. It's just MINUT. But Minute is a technology that will alert us if the sound level in the house gets too high. We have a no party policy. So if it gets too high, the guests get a text message going, hey, turn it down. And if they don't, they get a phone call saying, no, seriously, turn it down. And if they don't, then the police show up and have them turn it down. So that's one of the ways that we protect the neighbors and the house, because people aren't allowed to throw parties. And if they are, we want to know about it and move them out. And then Ring is security. So we know whether windows are left open, door locks. It also connects to our smart locks. Price Labs is a pricing software. So we spend $20 a month to have really, really, really smart computers guide our pricing for this property. So we maximize the number of nights booked against the amount we're charging. And then Wi-Fi, because everyone needs Wi-Fi. Any questions about that?
No, I'm so glad you broke that down for everybody, because a lot of times when we share numbers, we just talk about bulk costs or expenses. And, you know, you guys truly, just by looking at your expense breakdown, you have your systems in place. And when you first started off, Tom, again, you know, we might have folks on, Ash and Tom, that have never done a short-term rental, much less an arbitrage model, and they don't have their systems yet. And so how did you learn all about that? Was it from the community? Was it from the classes? Was it a combination of both?
Yeah, it really was a combination. So the first two that I did, I just banged my head against. It's like, oh, something's on fire, go put the fire out. Oh, another thing's on fire, go put the fire out. And then in the first class that Renatus came out with, the 3-day master class on this, it was like, that was where I learned about hospitable. And that's where I learned about automated responses. And that's where I learned about setting up systems. Ash is brilliant at messaging, and our robots are brilliant at responding to people immediately. So hospitable, one of the things that it allows us to do is automate our guest communication so that 98% of the messages are automatically sent. In fact, it's so good, and with Ash's copywriting, it's so good that we frequently get 5-star reviews from guests that include comments about how amazing Ash's communication is, our communication is, and we're like, didn't even know that person stayed there. I've never seen that name before.
Our favorite guest is the guest that we don't have to actually communicate with.
Yeah.
So that means that their stay worked and that it was seamless and they enjoyed it. So
yeah, we own a townhouse near Starved Rock State Park, which is about an hour and a half south of Chicago. And there was a point like a year ago where I got an invoice for 8 cleanings. And I'm like, oh, Scott, I took my eye off the ball with this cleaner. She's taking advantage. Like, I wasn't paying attention, and now she's overcharging me for cleanings. And I went back in and looked at the calendar and went, oh no, we had 8 different guests stay this month. And I haven't talked to anybody. Like, that the system, when it's well built and tended to, really makes this an automatable, delightful business. And as
That's
a
amazing.
side note, advanced tip, if you're already up and running and you don't have AI crafting most of your responses, then your system needs an upgrade. We're using AI tools that actually make our message, especially for me. Someone asks a question, I'm like,
me too.
If it's one of the 2% of questions that our automated information doesn't address, then, you know, we'll get into the point where AI just handles it. But right now, I'll craft something and then ask AI to say it better. And it always does so much better. I'm like,
it's showing me up, but I love it.
It's really good.
It's very useful.
Yeah. So
did you not, I just want to, for everybody that's on today, did you not say how much time are you guys spending now a week working on and you have how many short terms and how many long terms right now?
We've got a dozen of each.
Okay, got 24 properties that are mixed long-term, short-term.
Yeah.
And how much time a week are you spending on this?
The short term, so we spend a lot of time in our business, but That's because we're building our business and honing our systems. So once we have a short-term rental set up,
Right.
a short-term rental properly set up takes maybe 10, 15 minutes a month.
A month.
A month.
And
Well,
that's barring any extreme circumstance.
well, sure.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, you're averaging out just your regular touching base with it, making sure things are good. It's remote and it's super easy.
We have a townhouse in Orlando. It took 4 12-hour days to set up in June a year and a half ago. And we haven't been back since. We're going to go to Disney, I think, in January, probably. So we'll go.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a side trip planned.
We'll go check out the property.
Yeah.
Yeah, got to go check out your investment, right?
Well, the kids really want to.
The kids really want to go see the investment property.
Because
next to Disney.
the almost 12-year-old is learning about real estate now and understanding investment.
Yeah.
Well, I can see a little negotiation going on here with you and the kids. Like, okay, we'll do it, but while we're there might be a little bit of work you guys have to do, right?
Deep cleaning, scrubbing baseboards or something. We'll find something. Find something to do.
I don't know. If I was a kid and I could go ride all those great rides and go through the park, but on the other side, I had to spend a couple hours doing work here or there, I'd say that's a pretty good trade-off.
Yeah. Oh, definitely he would. He has learned the labor of hard work cleaning one of our units here in Denver. So
that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
well, guys, this has been
with those systems, and then the other thing is our proximity partners. So like we have the maintenance people, we have the cleaners in Orlando in these remote spots where we don't, even here in Denver, we've set up teams where we don't have to be the person doing the actual work. So that's, that 15 minutes is making the phone call, setting the thing in place. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So just to wrap the numbers, Scott.
Yes.
So far, 66,000, VRBO 14,000. The payments remaining is 17. So our annual gross is 82,000 for the year, which means the monthly gross for 2023 is 6890. So after the expenses, this little house for about 15 minutes a month is sending us about $1,500 a month.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
So if your boss isn't paying you $6,000 there, you're working on the wrong thing for the wrong people.
We do have a good question here that maybe you guys might want to comment on before we wrap up today. Is there any tools that you guys use to identify where the best properties for a short-term rental would be?
There are tools that we use to look at the projected revenue of a property anywhere. So there are people that sell sort of like, this is the best place to invest for short-term rentals right now, which I think personally is a really dangerous way to look for the property.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a great strategy as long as it works. But there's a possibility that we would have to pivot and switch this to a midterm rental or a long-term rental. Like there are other considerations. So we look at the property first and does it work financially? So Price Labs has a tool for looking at basically doing a revenue comparison, given other short-term rentals, given other Airbnbs in this 2-mile radius, here's what you can expect to make. So for the Orlando property, like, is Orlando a great short-term rental market? It depends. There are thousands of people doing it. So it's swamped, but people want to go there. So if you do it well, if you do it poorly, you'll get squashed. If you do it well, it's a great place. So that, is it a good place isn't the best question. Can we make more money? Can we gross more than the expenses are going to be by enough to make it worth doing the deal? And do we have exit strategies? If Parker says no more short-term rentals, which is a real possibility. Denver did.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great question.
So kind of wrap up, guys. We're about 5 minutes to the top of the hour. I'd love to leave just a few minutes for both of you guys to kind of leave some final remarks, some comments. For folks that are on today looking at this industry, looking at real estate investing, whether it be short-term, mid-term, long-term, fix and flip, whatever the strategy might be, and trying to decide, is this the group and the community that I want to be a part of? Can you guys kind of wrap things up and maybe leave everybody with a few comments in regards to that? Ash, if you want to start us off, that'd be great.
Sure. I mean, like I said earlier, some of you may have jumped on after I said this earlier. I couldn't be doing this without this community and the training that's involved here. And I'm someone who does my homework. I don't just dive in really with a global mindset. I'm more analytical. I'm like, I need to know that what I'm signing up for is the best of the best. And I did do my homework, and I'm not just biased because I'm here. I'm biased because I did the homework, and I can tell you this is hands down the best training you're going to find, because even if you find something comparable in the information, you're going to be lacking the community, and that accountability is what really makes you thrive and survive in a market that it's not easy if you don't know what you're doing. So yeah. And just the relationships that we've gained here. I mean, aside from the obvious, meeting my partner in all of life, just the relationships here, they're really priceless. And I think that's harder and harder to find in digital age. We're more connected at a distance, but sometimes not as connected in our communities. And I love being able to host a community here in Denver, connect with other local people, and help inspire each other through those interactions and all of the events that we have together.
That's really great. Yeah, Scott, the education that we have has made such a phenomenal and tremendous difference in our financial life, in my view of the world, and how we see business. I've started a bunch of companies before I got together with this group and failed and banged my head. And I just felt like I was kind of alone, and everything that I looked at was a sales pitch. And when I started with this community, I actually, like, every week got together with real people, and we do that in person. We do that online if it's, if you live more than a few hours away from one of our groups. But that being able to actually connect with real people makes such a difference, because our education is awesome. It's online, it's available all the time. For me, if I didn't have other people expecting me to have done the training, then I would have just pushed it off. I would have pushed it off, and I never would have gotten here. But also being able to talk to other people who speak the same language about what I'm thinking, about what I'm working on, has been invaluable. So the education and the community together have shifted the way that we see things. Anyone on here who doesn't think that there are lots and lots of deals should hang out with our group longer, because you start to learn how to see deals everywhere. And anybody on here who's like, man, if only I had the money. If I had the money, then I could do real estate investing. One of the most impactful things that I learned is that it's not if I had the money, it's if I learn how to put together deals, if I learn how to solve problems. Because if you learn how to solve problems and put together the deals, the money gets really easy. And I heard that early on and I didn't believe it. But if you know how to solve problems and put deals together, the money gets really easy. And this is an education for doing that. And I've been at this for 8 years. I've bought all of the education that Renatus offers. It's cost me less than a semester of undergraduate classes at Denver University. And it's more than a master's in terms of content, caliber, quality. We've got 40 multi-million-dollar instructors. We're hanging out with one She's in Chicago. We're here. We're asking questions online. I mean, if you're looking to change your financial destiny, this is the environment that I've found that if you just keep at it, will give you the tools, the resources, the knowledge, the relationships to forever change your financial future and that of your family. And that's a big reason why I keep showing up week after week. Because at this point, our business is good, Scott. We don't really, we get to contribute now. We get to be some of the people that get to give back. And here's what I'll leave you with. What I want for everybody who learns about our group is for them to have the opportunity to develop themselves into someone who lives life in a way that they get to inspire other people to live a bigger, fuller life.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So I want to throw out for everybody that's on right as we wrap up here, guys. If you're on today and you want to learn more about our community, about the education platform, about short-term rentals, about whatever strategy it might be, right after this property tour in about 5 to 10 minutes on a different link, you would want to get back to who invited you, send them a text, say, hey, I'd love to go to the next step, kind of like learn more about the community, an overview of everything. Get back with who invited you. They'll send it to you and you can plug on. It'll be well worth your time. And again, that's at a different Zoom link. So you want to get that set up so you can get that link. Ash, Tom, this has been a great property tour. So glad you guys, I know you're multitasking today. You've got a live event going on there right now. You've got a lot of people in another conference room there that are learning about raising private capital. And I know you need to get back to that, but thank you for taking time out to be with us and to share and give back. I hope you guys have a great, great Christmas. And we look forward to seeing you guys in the near future.
Yeah, and thank you to you and Yaz and everyone who helps do this property tour. Thank you so much.
It's an honor being here.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.